Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, distinguished guests. On behalf of the organizing committee, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the 13th edition of the Asia-Pacific Conference, titled Navigating Global Risks, the Role of Cooperation in the Indo-Pacific's Future. We are excited to host this event for the very first time here in Lublin. It is truly an honor to have such a distinguished group of scholars and experts from various fields gathered here today and joining us online throughout the day to engage in insightful discussions. This conference has a long-standing tradition of providing a unique platform for knowledge sharing, fostering collaboration, and addressing key challenges and opportunities in this dynamic region. Today we will have a pleasure of hearing from a wide range of speakers and engaging in thought-provoking sessions that will enrich our understanding of the complex issues shaping the future of the Indo-Pacific. The conference is coordinated by the Wrocław University of Economics through the Asia and Pacific Research Center, which hosted the event in the past. We are grateful for their partnership and for entrusting us with the organization of this conference edition. Today's event is held under the patronage of the rector of Maria Curie Skłodowska University and the Lublin branch of the Polish Academy of Sciences, which further underscores the importance and relevance of our discussions. At this point, I am honored to invite Professor Zbigniew Pastuszak, Vice Rector for Development and Business Cooperation at UMCS, to formally open the conference and share a few words of welcome on the behalf of the Rector of the University. Please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and good afternoon, because I know a few of our colleagues they are attending the conference online. So good morning, everyone. On behalf of the rector of our university, Professor Radosław Dobrowolski, the Rector's Collegium, and myself for sure, I'm very warmly welcome you at this beautiful place, a very academic city of Lublin, and very good, very public, and the biggest university, Maria Curie Skłodowska University. I congratulate the organizers, local organizers, and Asia Pacific Forum organizers that you decide to organize the conference here at this university. And I'm looking especially at two faces of Professor Paweł Pasierbiak and Professor Sang-Chul Park, and thank you very much for your support for this idea and for collecting plenty of very good scientists that will share their opinions about the global risks, global crisis, and global activities of different countries, different economies, etc. We are at the University Maria Curie Skłodowska. This year we are celebrating 80 years of anniversary of our university. So this conference is one element of different conferences or meetings organized under this name of 80th anniversary. The city of Lublin is a city of students, for sure. The population of our city is close to 400 with suburbs, and the total number of students is more than 60,000. So I very warmly welcome all of students, ladies and gentlemen, that decide to spend some few hours during this conference, during these talks. So I wish you a very profitable conference, very good stay here, and hope you will find some solutions for the global risks. And I know the colleagues which will share their lecture, their opinions, they are very good experts. So we as a country, as a city as well, we are facing the global risk, one of global risks, which is connected with this brutal aggression of Russia to Ukraine. And we feel that our colleagues from Ukraine that are attending this conference will find some bright lights from this discussion regarding to the country recovery post-war. So I wish you good luck and good stay here. So thank you for organizing this forum here in Maria Skłodowska University. Thank you.
Thank you. Our conference is being held with the support of the Faculty of Economics, whose leadership is represented here today by Professor Mariusz Lipowski, the Dean of the Faculty, and Professor Andrzej Miszczuk, Director of the Institute of Economics and Finance, whom I would like to invite to share a few thoughts with us, please.
Good morning. I would like to welcome participants of the Cyclical Asia Pacific International Conference. I delighted that this 13th edition is being held in Lublin. I especially would like to thank Professor Bogusława Drelich-Skulska from Wrocław University of Economics and Business and the Lublin Organizing Committee headed by Professor Paweł Pasierbiak. The conference theme is of global risk is still relevant. Undoubtedly, an additional dimension of it, it's the election of new U.S. president. The U.S.-Asian political and economic rivalry is bound to increase. In this context, the conclusions of Mario Draghi report from September 2024 on the declining productivity and fast competitiveness of European Union countries are particularly worrying. There is therefore much to discuss. I wish you successful deliberations and I expect interesting post-conference publication. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor. We are now moving into the plenary session of the conference, which will take form of the discussion panel. This panel is titled Building Resilience, Economic, Political and Environmental Security and Cooperation Strategies in the Indo-Pacific. The Indo-Pacific region is facing increasingly complex challenges across these areas. And this panel will explore how resilience can be built in the face of economic volatility, political tensions, and environmental crisis, as well as the role of cooperation in addressing these challenges. I am honored to introduce the distinguished panelists who will bring wealth of expertise and experience in these challenges. Professor Sang-Chul Park, Tech University of Korea, please join us here. Professor Edward Haliżak, University of Warsaw. Professor Agata Ziętek, Maria Curie-Skłodowska University, Faculty of Political Science. Now, to guide us through today's discussion, I would like to invite Professor Paweł Pasierbiak, who is also the chair of the conference organizing committee. He will lead the discussion and ensure a dynamic exchange of ideas on the topic at hand. After the panelists share their thoughts, we will open the floor for questions, so please, if you have any questions, prepare them, and we will have time to answer them, hopefully. Professor Pasierbiak, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and welcome to our conference. And yes, we have this privilege to have this distinguished guest that accepted our invitation. So it was said we have around 1 hour, but I would like to divide it into two parts. The first one will discuss with our experts some issues concerning the Indo-Pacific, and then I would like you to ask questions and we'll try to address them, because there are many challenges, many risks in today's world, and yeah, we should try to explore it and find some solution for that. So, by the way of introduction, I would like to say that when I look at the title of that panel, I find at least three key issues here. The first is resilience, quite popular word recently. Resilience, so capacity of the system to withstand or to recover from difficulties. So the word difficulties is important here. What kind of difficulties we face? And the second is Indo-Pacific. Indo-Pacific, it is again quite popular term recently, but there is no one definition of that. So Indo-Pacific is kind of a geopolitical, geo-economical space. The term was used for the first time in the 70s by Australia, but again in 2007 used by Japan in an attempt to shape its relations with India, and then it became more popular. And since 2021, when AUKUS was created, it's kind of common, and sometimes we think about it as a region or mega region, but to be quite frank, I wouldn't agree with that, because if it spread from the east of Africa to the west of South America, it covers half of the world, actually. So it covers many, many other regions. But of course, it is in the center of interest nowadays, and many countries, many entities like European Union or United States, they address that area in their strategies, and many other countries just follow. So Indo-Pacific is in the center of interest today. And the third word that is important here is cooperation. Cooperation should be, or it is said to be, the best way to resolve our problems, our challenges. But is this true in reality, or is this only theory? So these are like two popular words, and cooperation between them, and these are kind of an interesting mix of terms, but with deep content. So this is the area that we would like to explore today with our experts, and yes, we will try to do so, and of course feel free to ask questions in the second part of our discussion. So after this short introduction, I would like to ask our experts kind of general questions. Maybe if you can try to say what you understand by Indo-Pacific first, because there are plenty of definitions. I was searching that, I was writing papers on that, and no one definition. So maybe it would be interesting to hear that from you. But then, what is the most important challenge or challenges? We are from different areas, like political science, international relations, economics. So what is the most important challenge for you, or challenges? So maybe I ask you, one by one, because it's interesting, right? So I don't know who would like to start, Professor?
Okay. Edward Haliszak, I am international relations scholar. What is the most important challenge for this region? This is the competing US and China strategies. There are two big tigers in this region, United States and China, and both of them formulate and try to implement different strategies toward the region. The United States in 2017 declared a strategy of free and open Indo-Pacific. According to the liberal democratic values. China do not accept the Indo-Pacific region, the concept, because China still stresses the importance of Asia-Pacific. The Indo-Pacific is an invention of the Western countries in the region, Japan, Australia, and the United States. And China treats Indo-Pacific region as a form of diplomatic and strategic encirclement of the China from the south, through the including South Asia countries with the India. But nevertheless, 10 years lapse, and China slowly is accommodating to this idea, and China is preferring its own model of development based on an idea of state capitalism or Sino-capitalism. This is the unique merger of the principles of market economy with the authoritarian regime. This is the essence. In this way, China is undermining the basic assumption of Western civilization, which is based on the assumption that the free market can operate only efficiently, only in the circumstances of democracy. Democracy and free market used to go hand in hand, but China is saying no. The market is able, free market is able to operate also under the centralized government, under the authoritarian government. This approach is becoming very much more popular in the region, because in many Asian countries there are a form of authoritarian governments. And this Chinese model becoming more attractive and challenging for the American vision of the order in the region based on a market economy and democracy. And this fact is this is the most worrying fact in the Washington. The United States, is very uneasy, because for the first time, the real challenge is occurring for the American model in the whole world. This is the problem. And if we look at the essence of the discourse taking place in the United States, they are afraid that the American model of way of life, democracy, market system and economy will disappear and will be replaced by the Chinese model one. So it's necessary to study what China want to introduce, because in a very pessimistic or optimistic scenario, in the next 100 years, we will live in a Chinese world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, of course, China is one of the important issues, and probably we'll hear during the conference many times about that. Yes, thank you very much. Professor Dziętek.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me here. So it's a pleasure to share my thoughts about the Indo-Pacific challenges with such a great scholars. So first of all, definition of Indo-Pacific, and I think it's, I do agree, it's not very clear. So we have many definition, and scholars discuss what does it mean Indo-Pacific. But if we look at the political science or international relations, maybe economics not as much, but many definitions are very unclear. So that give us a field or space, to interpret some situation as we would like to, or So that is much more, it gives us more chance, you know, to understand the situation. So that is one thing. But also if we look at the Indo-Pacific, I think there are some political consensus. Even Professor Haliszek mentioned about China, who firstly did not accept the concept of Indo-Pacific, but I think recently it's he must face this term. So I can see that there's some kind of political consensus agreement. So if we talk about region, one of the way how to define the region is as consensus or agreement that we see the region, that it exists, yes. And if we look at the strategies, you know, many strategies from the region, they have the Indo-Pacific strategies. Also, European Union have this kind of strategy. So if we have this strategy, that means that the region exists. So it's one of the explanation. And of course we live in, I can say we live in a time of uncertainty. It's very, very interesting time. I'm not sure if I would like to live in this interesting time, but I do remember, you know, the 90s when we have a lot of hope because of the end of the Cold War, and the many institutions bring us new hope for integration, for new institutions, and in the 21st century, in the second decade or third decade even of the 21st century, we think that the world is very uncertain because of many variables, many countries who become more powerful than before, and it's very, very difficult to predict what would happen. And if we look at the political challenges, I do agree that China is one of the challenges, but also United States-China rivalry in the region. And this rivalry is present in many areas, of course military, political, but also recently technological area. And I think it's one of the challenge. And also what is another challenge, I think it's still quite weak multilateralism. So we can observe that countries, states prefer to solve some problems or discuss in bilateral forum, not create a multilateral forum. And if we see some multilateral organization, they are rather weak. They base on consensus like ASEAN, so they are not effective. And what we can see, for example, China very well play with ASEAN, make some kind of division within ASEAN. So that I think it's also one of the challenge. And probably also internal issues. So there's some states are not very stable, so there's not political stable. And we have problem with minority, ethnic minority, you know, how to govern. So there are some threats, not only traditional threats, but also non-traditional threats. So there are many issues we can, you know, pose here. So, but maybe I will stop here.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, interesting times indeed. But for social science scholars, it's
Yes.
the field of exploration.
It's our time.
Yes, it's our time. Okay, thank you very much, and maybe some insight from Asian perspective. So, Professor Park, please share with us your concerns, the major concerns as for Indo-Pacific.
First of all, I was informed that South Korean ambassador were anticipated to participate this conference, but in the last minute he couldn't come. So I think it might be good for all of your audience to listen exactly an official statement of His Excellency's viewpoints. But while listening the two scholars, the explanation, I think it's better, much better that we scholars and students can discuss much open and freely. he might be a bit reluctant to express his personal and official opinion because of online as well, I think. So that's a short explanation from my side. And I think the concept of Indo-Pacific was pretty much vague in the beginning. But I think not now anymore, in my opinion. It has evolved from the geopolitical concept. In fact, starting 94 under Clinton administration, the core reason why the U.S. government under the Clinton leadership started to focus on Indo-Pacific region was, at the time, China was not the problem maker because China wanted to get in the World Trade Organization and focusing on the rapid economic development and so on. Then for the U.S. perspective, if U.S. attracts India, then there is no problem anymore to rule the world based on U.S.-dominated unipolar global system. That's the core point why U.S. government intended to push the Indo-Pacific region. But later, when China's economic power becomes bigger and larger to compete with the U.S., particularly since the year 2010, when China became the second largest economic power. The concept of Indo-Pacific turned to rather a geo-economic concept. So the reason why both parties from the US and China started to talk about the Indo-Pacific is, if you look at the economic terms, Indo-Pacific covers around 58% of global territory, having over 80% of population, generating more than 60% of global GDP. So just think about it. Which region on the earth can generate such an amount of GDP? It means if either China or USA can be overwhelmed in this region, then they can be the superpower easily. That's the key point. Therefore, I'm saying to you that the concept of Indo-Pacific was vague and unclear, but now it's getting more clear to focus on the geo-economic concept. And it has been evolved even further now, the national security. So the day before yesterday, I delivered my special lectures as well. Nowadays, everybody talks of security, right? Everything is a security. Political security, economic security, even environmental security, and so on. So that's the fact and the reality we are living now. And these challenges and competitions between two powers will continue at least 2050 until China will gain its target. But the question is still remained whether it is possible or not. For instance, if you look at the inside of the Chinese economy, it has more problems and hurdles and difficulties compared to other advanced countries. So as a South Korean, South Korea and Japan are representing a so-called democratic and open market systems based on so-called democratic virtues and human rights and so on. And if I address you my personal experience, I'm the first generation to fight for democracy. I was on the street to fight for the democracy. So I know how valuable is the virtue of democracy and the human right. Although it has started in Europe or Western society, I understand what kinds of miserable mistake we have, or rather European, certainly in Asian side, the Japanese as well, so-called Asian and European mistake in the history. So final result is the polars. Number one is democracy, and the other one is human rights, which are the major core points or basement of the United Nations. So what a European learned and found out the virtues and the values of a human being, which is correct and right and universal, then Asian can adopt it as well, because it is the universal values. So two countries, as said, South Korea and Japan, are representing in this regime. And this is the basement for two countries, along with the Western European countries, certainly United States of America, although I'm pretty much worried about the return of Donald Trump, the president-elected, but let us see how the world will become in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Of course, I will ask you about Donald Trump, elections, but I would like to ask, the last question, because it could dominate our discussion probably. Yes, so maybe a little bit we change direction toward economics. So maybe Professor Park, the question to you, and for you, of course, if you'd like to take the question, because we know that we have this rivalry, this competition between United States and China, more or less. And we know that nowadays Asia is an economic center of the world, actually. The economic growth is there, production is there. We are talking about factory Asia, right? So they have like negotiation power bigger than before. And we can observe these changes in balance of economic power and, of course, political power and so on. If we look at what's going on in chip industry, for example, so this is like a key area nowadays to consider in political, economic, social terms. So in relation to our title, I would like to ask maybe in another way. So what kind of cooperative actions are possible in Indo-Pacific, maybe not only, but in Indo-Pacific, to fight against economic crisis? We had, pandemic, we had this crisis with production links, global value chains. So maybe there are some possibilities for countries to cooperate, because we are talking about rivalry almost all the time between United States and China and other countries. But as you mentioned, South Korea, for example, is a country that tries to collaborate with others, right? Important Asian countries. So maybe there are some possibilities. So Professor Park, if you could just address this question.
I think no countries can develop continuously without collaboration, even United States of America. Recently, the US President-elected Donald Trump talked to South Korean president and talked about U.S. needs South Korean shipbuilding industry because we can repair, manage, and operating the U.S. Navy vessels. If U.S. can do it, but if U.S. do it, it will cost 3 times higher and 2 times longer. South Korea can do it 1/3 of price and faster than 50% in time. So it means if U.S. do by itself, the inefficiency takes place. This is the reason why all nations must collaborate with each other, as economics textbook used to say. I think all of you, or many of you, have learned what is the core point about the trade, right? By trading, all participants in the market can make profit in so-called free trade. Therefore, everybody's ready to trade with each other. The basic function is valid, even same in between the basic relationship of nations as well. Then what is going on in Indo-Pacific is, it is so-called the political, military hegemony conflict that prevent active and free cooperation in many countries. So what the South Korea is trying to do is, we expect that the global supply chains will be dualistic. US-led, high-tech based the global supply chains with low and middle tech oriented global chains led by China. But luckily, South Korea can deal with both. But unfortunately, our total volume of the trade will not grow as fast as we expected before, because the US government, led by a new elected president, will raise the tariff, right? The structure of trade in East Asia is China exports the final goods to USA and the European Union by importing intermediate goods, mainly from Korea and Japan. We export to China intermediate goods 70% in total export. Then if USA raise the tariff, then Chinese export to USA will decline and importing less intermediate goods. Therefore, we have to find out the replacement, which country can replace the Chinese market. We think India. Therefore, we are focusing on Indian market with over 14 billion population and double higher economic growth than Chinese economic growth. But one thing we worry is, in India, still the level of labor force is much lower than in China. And in my personal opinion, after visiting India and dealing with the Chinese, you know, the Northeast Asian countries having the common cultural background, which is Confucianism, which is more or less same concept of Protestantism in Europe, how USA was built by the European immigrants based on Protestantism. So Korea, Japan, and China do have this traditional background. But in India, it's a tropical country, too hot. If they are too diligent, they will die very fast. So that's one thing I worry how they could deal with to educate people systematically and rapidly as we did last 5 decades. So that's the one of solutions for South Korea to deal with and a diversified market and to prepare the rising the tariffs in U.S. If tariff in U.S. is increasing, certainly tariff in Europe will increase, and in China as well. So that's the basic function of trade, how it works. So then South Korea, as a small open economic system, have to deal with this negative global trade environment. But there is still a possibility because we have accumulated these kinds of analysis and experiences last 6 decades. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Please,
could I
Professor.
just one short comment to my colleague? I think you are very optimistic when you talk about European values and that Asian countries could adopt them. Because, of course, in case of South Korea and Japan, we have a very good examples. But if we look at other Asian countries, I think the picture is not very optimistic. And I think it's a kind of competition between China and, let's say, Western world. If we're in case of some universal values. And another thing which is also connected with the economics, it's a violation of intellectual property rights, which are not accepted or violated by many countries in the region. That means that some universal rights are not universal, or with some limitation of universal. So it's just one comment.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Professor Halijek.
Okay. We will have to admit that in the Pacific region is more stable region than European one. Since after the Cold War, there were in Europe Balkan Wars, Caucasian Wars, and now we have a Russian invasion. Europe is a center of destabilization, is a zone of war, constant war. In the Pacific region, the last conflict took place in 1979, or more than half a century ago, between China and Vietnam. Since then, there was no direct military clash between any Indo-Pacific countries of the region. This is, of course, there are territorial disputes. Look at the South Asian dispute. All sides of these disputes try to avoid direct confrontation. China uses some specific form of coercion using a water cannon against its competitors from Vietnam or Philippines. What makes this region very stable? First of all, the labor division, economic cooperation plays important role. And of course, the United States contributes a lot, but more and more China. For almost all in the Pacific region, China is a #1 trade partner, and the access to Chinese market is the most important value for all other countries, for Vietnam, for India, for the even for the United States. Professor John mentioned about the possible increase of tariffs by the United States. There will be, it will be rather low possibility because big American business want to enter into the China, and Elon Musk has its own factory near the Shanghai Tesla factory where 30,000 Chinese workers work 24 hours per day and all the weeks, months, producing 500,000 of Tesla cars. And the billions of dollars Musk earned came from China, and other big US billionaires want to follow his model of business with China. So the China is the most important integrating. And the next problem I would like to point out, a lot of intra-regional arrangements on trade liberalization, bilateral or sub-regional. And last but not least, I would like to pay attention to the role of ASEAN countries. 10 Southeast Asian countries are also important driving force of multilateral cooperation in the region. The ASEAN countries adopted very skillful strategy balancing between China and the United States. This is the most interesting aspect of intra-regional region. Both the United States and China try to attract ASEAN, and they avoid the direct alignments, maneuvering between them to avoid direct confrontation with them, compel both powers to cooperate.
Thank you very much. So if I read well, what you are saying is cooperation is important for Korea, the ability to cooperate with everyone actually, with this more advanced, less advanced countries. Also, this bottom-up approach, as you mentioned, that there are connections, economic connections, not only connections in Asia are very important. And centrality of ASEAN, as you mentioned, so ability to adjust to the situation and being kind of a stabilization in the region. As we are dangerously approaching our time limits, I wanted to ask you about, of course, elections in the United States, but very shortly. If I may introduce, a bit, I found some headlines in newspapers. So at first it was, "Buckle up, Asia tech industry braces for bumpy ride under Trump. Trump's return risks trade tension with Japan as imbalance widens. With Trump returns, US allies need plan B for security." So it was at first. And now it's a little bit different because these headlines are, for example, Trump's return presents opportunities for China, and so on and so forth. So we adjusted a little bit, I guess, to that news, right? So the question is, very shortly, what consequences, maybe one consequence that the most important, will the election of 47th President of the United States will have on economic, political, or environmental security in the Indo-Pacific? Very shortly, because we would like to ask our audience to also ask questions to you. So, please.
The United States is generally obsessed with China because China turns out to be a real competitor. The United States do not name China as an enemy. The Soviet Union was an enemy. China, in official documents, is named as a competitor or strategic competitor. So this is a market approach toward the relations with China. United States want to compete through imposing limited trade war, but also want to cooperate, especially big business. For many US industries, China is indispensable partner. Let's take aerospace industry, civilian air carrier. For the Boeing company, that China is an attractive market to enlarge their sales, because without access to China, big name of US industry, Boeing, will disappear. And we will see an interesting competition between EU industry, Airbus, with the Boeing, in order to get an access to China. China has its own model of COMAC air passenger, but it's not enough. So I think that American big business is strongly interested in making a business in China. The last data, US-owned companies in China, the worth of sales amount to $500 billion. This is a lot, and they want to increase this volume of sales.
It's a huge market, of course.
Okay, so I can just say that probably it would be, as many journalists especially said, some kind of transactional presidency. So because everyone said that Donald Trump is a big businessman, even if he collapsed several times, yes, but he also always recovers, so that it's a good future. So transactional, it means that what is good for United States and what is good for his advisor, like Elon Musk and other big business, probably would be good for United States. But I think it's too early to predict, because I think it's a you know, I don't want to be a future teller.
No, Professor.
Okay, so I'd like to introduce you a bit more fundamental, the demographic condition in USA, why Trumpism took place since 2016, and what is the content of the latest election this time. This election is the first time in US history that non-European descendants in NZ generation, meaning that from 20 to 30 years, was minority, not majority. The increase of population in a non-European descendant is much faster than other immigration groups. So now the portion is around 60% of European immigrant background, and 40% is from outside of European immigrants. It will turn out year 2030, 50-50. And it will turn out even 2050, 40-60. Then you calculate what will be the US direction, and it's no wonder you will see suddenly US president as like my face, because South Korean descendant produced in this election 1 senator from New Jersey and 5 the congressmen. It is the largest number of in South Korean immigrant history in United States of America. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, so you have good press. I mean, South Korea, you know, Nobel Prize in Literature and so on and so forth. Okay, good, good. Thank you very much. I think we have a room for a few questions from the audience. So feel free. I think there is a microphone, and if you have questions, just raise your hand, and yes, and microphone will be delivered. I will deliver you a microphone.
Marcin Garbowski, Lublin City Hall. I have a question what is your opinion on the role of BRICS in the region and potential that, let's say, China will get closer with India and countries in the region, and that this will somehow threat the position of the dollar? And maybe a bit more on the role of these of currency in these potential conflicts.
I will have a presentation at in the next panel at 1:40 p.m. and I will have a talk on U.S.-China competition. There are two fields: competition, trade and technology competition, and incoming competition is a financial monetary competition. China is not ready to compete with the United States in financial monetary competition. Not ready yet. But China has a great asset. This is the Hong Kong. Hong Kong, with its as a financial center, in 2047, Hong Kong will become a part of China, according to the British agreement. And China and the Hong Kong will be, with its huge, well-integrated banks, financial system with the rest of the world, will be used by the China as an instrument of competition with the United States. Chinese currency, renminbi or yuan, is not fully convertible, and the rate of exchange is managed, rather swiftly is managed. But when China will convert its currency, it will adopt a new floating regime, probably at least around 2050. Because now China's internal financial institutions are too weak to compete. I was told by one of the Chinese scholars that if now China will adopt a floating regime, all savings from China will outflow from China, because the Chinese citizens will want to buy foreign assets, because they do not believe in Chinese assets. So this is the deeply politically motivated approach. So given this, the peculiarities and the conditions connected with this aspect of economy, China is not ready to compete, and it will take at least half a century to obtain competency, sophistication, institutionalization of financial institutions to compete effectively with the United States. The last question, please do notice that China is obeying financial sanctions imposed on Russia by the United States. Chinese banks try to avoid the indirect service in payments with Russia. Why? Because they are afraid of being cut off from the access to the US markets.
And I think the US dollar dominance in the global economic system will last at least in a foreseeable future. I'm not sure whether it will take 50 years or less. But one thing is sure: if the dollar system exists and continues, the U.S. greenback dominance will last. And the environment of petrodollar system is at present pro-U.S. side, because USA is the energy the exporting countries instead of importing countries since 2018. This point, what Donald Trump pointed out all the time, he made a great historical success to become the energy exporting countries. The energy plays, in fact, a very important role to maintain global superpower. Without energy resource problem, no country or no region can be superpower, in fact, so which is one of the biggest the weakness in European Union, because the EU has supply only 50% of energy resources, so the rest of them is dependent on importing from outside. So this is the reason why the German economy is sluggish and shaking now. So number one is whether or not petro-euro, petro-dollar system will maintain or not. And the second is you have to look at the demography as well. So US, the population is still increasing, meaning that the US economy has still room to grow further. While the Chinese population, China's demography will face in 5 to 10 years to decline because of aging society rapidly right after Japan, Korea, and China. That's my two key points I like to point out.
Okay, so I think it was also a question about the BRICS, and I think the BRICS is on the agenda now. So if we look at the news, many information about extended the BRICS. So usually it was 5 big countries, powers in different continents, and now we have another newcomers. And we'll see, you know, because maybe for a while after when it was set up, the BRICS was like a new invention, but I think with very strong economic domination of China, because if we look at the exchange between those 5 countries, the Chinese domination was very visible. And now we have newcomers, so I don't know what kind of project will be. Maybe the old idea was, you know.
One sentence, if I may, about the BRICS and India. India is playing in this scheme very important role, but India is a really unpredictable actor. They are pro-American, and at the same, they are also anti-American. They want to cooperate with China, and they feel great anti-Chinese phobia. This is very nationalistic society and government which declares attachment to the liberal value. But in reality, this is a very nationalistic society and the government. And Professor Chul mentioned that the problem of India's competitiveness. India has at least 40% of population, illiterate population. How to compete in the world affairs with have a society illiterate? The greatest achievement of communist China under the Mao was to fighting with the illiteracy. Great Chinese Communist Party success, and the next generation became more and more attached to the advancement in education. India is a great troublemaker for the regional partners and for the United States and also European. Please look, guys, we negotiate with India free trade agreement since 2004. 2 decades lapse and nothing.
Hello, Szymon Mazurek from Wrocław University of Economics and Business. correct me if I'm wrong, but what I understood from your discussion is that that you believe that the source of the stability and also the fortune, yes, the future, in the future in Asia Pacific region is mostly connected with economic relations, linkages, and business interests in terms of those high-tech wealthy people from US, yes, and but I have a question, yes, to you. Don't you think that this kind of concept, yes, that we are basing our geopolitical stability on economic relations was somehow, it's gotten old and kind of like false in the face of Russian invasion? Yes, because like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we were actually looking at the same pattern here, yes, that we will just, the economic relations will stop Russia to do something wrong, yes, and they will be like joined, yes, with us in the in this growth or liberal approach. And as we see that they decided to risk that. Yes, maybe what if we are all wrong and for example China will risk this kind of like interest, economic interest, just to achieve different goals.
Okay, good question, because as far as the Russia concerned, this is the great failure of the liberal program, because Western countries believe that integrating Russia with the Western liberal institution and imposing a liberalism in Russia will bring democracy, freedom, and the progress in Russia. Russia was not able to internalize Western values. They rejected our values. As far as the Asia-Pacific concerned, the liberal values is not dominant idea, because, as Professor said, this is the Confucianism. The different ideology, different way of thinking about the ordinary life, about the human relations and connections. I ran a lecture on China foreign policy, and my first topic in this course is a problem of Chinese peaceful tradition. Because using a direct military force in a East Asian tradition is not deeply embedded. They are more peaceful than we are. We as a European, we as a Westerners, we are more prone to use force than Asian societies. This is my personal view.
Yes, I think that Russia could offer to the world mostly sources. And if we look at the other Asian countries, they have more than sources. So that it may be, that Russia could risk the war, because mostly it's based, the country was based on the sources. And of course, there are some sanctions, but Russia or Asian countries, they have advantage of that, because if you look at the, for example, India and even in the beginning, Japan, or China itself, they import a lot of sources for very low prices. So it was, for them, it was a good situation. So I think for Russia it was easier, to take this risk and start the war, because maybe he can gain more.
I'd like to point out some academic points of view to bring Karl Marx regarding the production system. He wrote one chapter about the Asian production system, which is fundamentally different compared to the European one. So it means production system means one of the major part of cultural diversity. It means whenever I come to you, I feel cultural shock, no matter where I am. I think vice versa. when you came to Asia in Japan, you must have felt same. It means the human being have not been interacted as like now. It started just less than 50 or 60 years long. It means we have to understand each other deep enough in order to avoid any kind of conflicts, including military conflicts. But we have not done so far so much effort. Therefore, this kind of discussion session and international conference are extremely important, even using online conference, to understand each other deep enough. What are differences between us, and to understand each other. Most of conflicts are taking place by the misunderstanding, in my opinion. Therefore, I see the importance of this panel session as well as a conference for all participants as well as the online audiences as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, so it's not only misunderstanding, but also lack of trust. And I think this is a good point, that if we will communicate, we will discuss. And not only scientists, because we are more willing to understand each other, but the politics, they should, build some kind of trust between themselves, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry to tell you that we are behind the time, and and I've got the impression that we only touched, the problem, and it's wide and broad and should be discussed, and we will do it. There were no questions from the chat. The participants had this opportunity, so thank you very much, and I hope we'll continue that discussion during our coffee break. Yes, I think it was really valuable discussion, and I thank you very much again, and thank you for attending that part of the conference.
Thank you.